Hello, my loves. I love you, darlings. So I came across a blog on an Asian men, black women website, and one of the people on there was talking about what it's like to be an author and write books about interracial relationships with black women and Asian men. And she found it very difficult because she was based in Japan, and what she wanted to know is, normal resources about what it's like. But what was difficult for her was it doesn't seem like it's a thing in Japan. So I'm here to tell you it is. There are a lot of black women out here that have married Japanese men. And when I say out here, I mean in Tokyo. Also, a lot of the women are delightfully and deliciously larger and rounder and curvier than might be expected in the normal Japanese population, if that makes sense. So your normal, curvy, deliciously curvy, delightfully curvy, delicious woman from back home often meets a Japanese guy here and they marry. So that's not a thing that doesn't happen. In fact, most of the women that I know are delightfully and deliciously curvy. So that's not a barrier. I was gonna say barrier of entry, but that sounds wrong. But technically, right? So if you're someone who's looking to marry someone who's Japanese, or you're doing research, the woman, the protagonist, doesn't have to be like this skinny mini. I'm a bit of a skinny mini. I wouldn't mind a bit more in the back, but it doesn't always have to be a skinny mini. What I would say is now, because of different programs like JET and the teaching programs, Japanese men are being exposed to women from different places. I will always say in my opinion, think it's easier if you're from America or Britain, just because there's that kudos of, oh, she's from America, or oh, she's from the UK. And I think for my African sisters, it might be harder because obviously in African countries, they do speak English. I don't want people to think that they don't, because they do. But there's not that street cred that can come along with, And even as a Brit, when I'm in the UK, people see him, and the Japanese passport is the strongest passport in the world at the moment. But people see him and they're like, oh, she's just there for the passport. And people see him and they're like, he's just there for the passport. Do you know what I mean? It's ridiculous, but a lot of people can't understand, like, what is the juice? Why are these people together? There must be a reason. And when I met my husband, I met him over 14 years ago. And then pre-BTS, there was a time when there wasn't BTS. And people were like, why are they together? How are they together? There must be a back reason. Either it's a visa, or he needs his papers, or there's something weird, or he's impoverished, or she's impoverished, and they need money, and da-da-da. And we both come from nice middle-class families. So it wasn't a case of I needed to be with him, or he needed to be with me. We loved each other, but it just seemed incredulous for people that this could be a real thing. So that's one of the stereotypes. Oh, it must be like a visa issue. Man must need his papers. She must need her papers. That's how often people assume. Nowadays, though, the same girls that were like, oh, I could never go with a Japanese guy, are like, oh, I love Japanese men. I love Asian men. And I'm like, are you taking a mick? Like a proper salt-based salty? Because years ago, I promise you they were not like that. People would literally look in my face, and even though I consider my fella to be conventionally good looking, they would be like, oh, I could never. Oh, that's gross. Asian guy, And honestly, there was a time when people thought like this, and it was like people who were like, my in brackets friends or family or whatever, because they just couldn't imagine it. They'd all have horror stories that always come out of racist tropes, like, does he eat cat and like just silly stuff. But now, thankfully, because of the popularity of BTS, because anime and manga have become like hipster, and shout out to all those people who used to like it before it was hipster, because of that now it's more commonplace to be like, oh, an Asian guy, that's cool, And I'm still bitter. I'm still salty. I walked so everyone could run. No, I'm joking, guys, but it really was like that. When it comes to family dynamics, ironically, the people that you think would be cool are not cool, and the people who you think wouldn't be cool are cool. Does that kind of make sense? So you might think, oh, my black family will be chill. They're not. You think the Asian family might be horrible. They might be totally chill. You know, because at the end of the day, if your husband is forward-facing enough to bring a black girl home, then either he's stupid and doesn't know how his family rolls, or he understands that his family are kind of chill, more chill than other families might be. But again, that's not a given. What I will say to a lot of girls is don't be a secret. There are too many girls out there that are like, oh, you know, I'm dating this guy from whatever country and he needs to keep me a secret. Baby girl. You should never be a secret. That's really, really important to know. Never be someone's secret. I don't care. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the time, you'll get pushback, because if the guy's being a kitten about it and not telling anyone, then people are going to be like, we can't trust him to be serious. You know, ironically, the guy who's like, look, this is my girl, I like her, you know, the ride or die, people are like, okay, cool, because they're like, if he's that solid about her, it must be true. It can't be a fake thing, you know? And again, I'm not saying it's perfect, but people are more chill about someone who's like, yeah, this is my girl, and what? Than someone who's like, oh, I don't know, oh, like this. It's annoying. What I will say is, if you are going to date an Asian guy and he does really like you, don't play with his heart, don't play with his feelings. It's not a game. You know, you can't upset Nana and give her a heart attack if you're not about it. And often a lot of Asian guys want to marry. So if they're dating you to marry. Does that make sense? Although obviously you're going to have your F-boys who are like, okay, it's my time to shine. Before people went on Asian guys, but now they are. Let me ride this bus till the wheels fall off. Of course there are going to be guys that are like that. So you've also got to be wary of that. I would say, you know, if a girl wants to get her things, go for it. But I would say just try to be a bit reserved in that, because there are still like map hunters. A map, okay, that could go a different way, but map hunters to me are basically guys that are like, yeah, I had a girl from Jamaica, I had a girl from here, I had a girl from there, and they might not necessarily like you, you know. I'm a girl who I don't do 50-50, I'm sorry. That's just the way I roll. I believe in hypergamy. I'm not into this 50-50 rubbish. And people will be like, oh, if you don't do 50-50, then he'll expect something. Okay. And the reason why I say this about the 50-50 is just because another thing I've noticed is in Japanese culture, often the woman will hold the purse strings. She'll be in charge of the money. She'll be, you know. But a lot of foreigners get mugged off and the guys start acting a bit weird with them, like I've seen from other relationships, and they'll just be like, oh, you should pay towards the rent, you should pay towards this, not realising that a Japanese girl wouldn't have to pay nothing. You know, it's obviously there are Japanese girls that work, but the culture is she gets looked after. So what I would say to you guys is, if you are going to enter a relationship, don't get mugged off. Don't get treated lesser than. You know, don't be so eager. So please, let the guy do a little running. Let the guy, you know, work for it. Because at the end of the day, you don't need to make it so easy that you get disrespected. And again, someone could do 50-50 and still be disrespected, but that's just my opinion. I'm that kind of girl, you know, I'm that kind of person. But I would say keep your wits about you. Whatever you do with someone else, don't lower your standards just because you're like, oh my god, I got an Asian guy. And another thing I would say is, and another DJ Khaled, and another one, and another thing that I would say is, you know, you have to keep your wits about you. You have to keep your standards, but you also have to treat that Asian guy that you're with. And I'm going from an Asian guy, black girl perspective because that's what I'm going to go from. But I would say you must make sure you treat that person with respect and dignity, and not just as, oh my god, this is an Asian guy. Because what I've noticed is a lot of people get this blindness. It's like you'll see a white guy and he's with an Asian girl, and she might not be the most beautiful, and that's nothing against her, but in his mind, and this is not everyone, just some bad people, he's just like, she's just an Asian girl, and let's go. And I've seen a lot of people do that same thing of, he's an Asian guy, let's go. And I'm not talking about in looks, but it's like they just objectify the person and they haven't let that person be their person. So for example, for my husband, he does not like anime, he does not like manga, he's not into none of that. So if someone was to approach him on that vibe, he'd just be like, you're strange, you know. And then the girl who is into anime and is into manga, she might feel like she's not getting her money's worth because he's not the kind of Asian person that she had in her vision, you know. So you have to look at it like that. Everyone is different. There might be Japanese guys, I'm using Japan as an example because that's what I know, who are not into the things that you might think are culturally relevant. And it's like when my family's traditionally, I'm a Brit, hello darling, North Wheezy, but my family's heritage is Jamaican as well as African American. It's a long story. But what I've noticed is, imagine if a guy came up to me and was like, Bob Marley, man. I'd be like, what are you doing? And I realised that a lot of girls will approach Asian guys in that same kind of Bob Marley, man. But they'll be like, One Piece, man. And it's like, no, darling, you can't do that. You have to see the person as a person. And again, I'm not saying that everyone does it. I'm just saying, be aware that that's a thing. You know, don't walk up to a Japanese guy and be like, oppa, not oppa. That's sorry, hold on, oppa, hold on, oppa, yeah, because that's annoying. Don't be like to shout out to my Filipinos. Don't say something ridiculous to them. Shout out to my Indians because they're Asian too. You know, and I know that's a whole stereotype, that's not a long story, but, you know, everyone is different. Even in the Filipino community, shout out to my Filipinos, got a lot of time for them. There'll be some that are like this, and some like that, and some like this. Indian, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, whatever. So if you don't want to be objectified and fetishized, don't do it to someone else. That's another thing I would say, because I see it done a lot. Like, people will come up to my husband and be like, oppa, that's a different word, oppa, and he's just like, bruv, what are you doing? Like, it's pure annoying. So that's what I'd say. Lastly, touching on, if you do marry someone who's from Japan or wherever and you have kids, work out your inner colorism. I meet too many people, not necessarily those with kids, but those who are like, Blasian babies, sweetheart, your Blasian baby might come out looking the exact same as your cousin. You know, exact same skin type, same hair type, same everything, beautifully made, as beautiful as your cousin who is beautifully dark skinned. So if you have colorism in you, then you need to address that, because what I worry about is when girls have this fetishization of Asian men, and they have this image of Blasian babies that are going to be light skinned with silky hair, and their baby doesn't come out like that. And there's nothing wrong with either side, you know, either the light side or either the dark side. The dark side sounds like Star Wars, no? But yeah, Jedi. Ooh, I love a bit of a Jedi. But anyway, you know, and then they're upset, and it's like, your baby's not a poodle. I'm not gonna lie, I will use Blasian in like as clickbait on YouTube, because that's what people literally type in. You know, when you create videos, you see what the algorithm says that people are looking for. So I will say Blasian, because that's what people are looking for, my loves. Blasian being black and Asian. It's not like I'm trying to poodleize my kids, it's just what people are looking for, and also what I'm looking for when I'm looking for other families. But what I will say is, look at Ryo Hachimura. He's beautifully dark skinned. He does not, I know people are going to beg it, but he does not look like he's Japanese necessarily, unless you know he's Japanese. His mum's a beautiful Japanese woman. But he came out beautifully dark skin, and I'm just going to say it and say it over and over again. Watch your colorism, because if you have colorism issues and your kids come out darker than you expected or lighter, it can go either way, you need to be able to address that. My kids came out beautifully dark with afros, and even then, if you look under a lot of my comments, it'll be like, you need to comb their hair, you need to put gel in their hair, you need to do this. And even that goes into colorism, because it's like, why can't they have fluffy 1960s afros? If you see my kids in real life, their hair is well oiled, smells beautiful, but it's just not covered in gel, because I hate gel. They see footballers that have big afros. They see people from the past who are militant protesters with big afro, and they're like, I want that afro, you know? And why shouldn't I give it to them? But even the curl situation ties into colorism, because it's that thing of an afro hair shouldn't be puffy. It should be curly, you know? Or it should be shiny, when anyone knows that afros just suck that moisture up. You know, I'm not going to put, what's that gel everyone uses? Oh, it's going to bug me. What's that gel everyone uses, my babes? I can't think of it. But, you know, I'm not going to put lashings and lashings of gel on my kids' hair when they don't like gel, because why am I defining their hair? You know, I'm defining it because people are like, oh, fluffy hair isn't cool. Fluffy hair isn't combed, even though it is combed. So what I will say to you is, if you are going to enter into a relationship, realise there are going to be a lot of issues that might come up that you might have to deal with, and it might come from outside or it might come from inside. For me, I was just happy to have kids, because I have a condition called endometriosis, which makes it difficult to have kids in the first place. So I couldn't even envision, I know this sounds really sad, but I couldn't even envision what my kids would look like, because I was so stressed out that I wouldn't have them in the first place. And they really are a blessing, and that goes into never thinking to give up, because you never know what will happen. And there's a long story about that I might do for another video. But what I will say is just be aware. And also, my loves, if someone doesn't treat you well, it doesn't matter what race, what culture, they're not treating you right. If someone's hiding you, you know, biblically it says, don't hide your light under a bushel or a bush, okay? And no one should hide you, darling. Baby girl, you don't sit in a corner. So if you're in a relationship where someone hides you because they say it's a cultural thing, that's not right at all. And I don't want this to turn into like some long crazy rant. So if you've got any ideas or comments or anything, put it in the comment box below, and I'm happy to be a resource for anyone that needs help when it comes to writing books, or they've started to date someone, or they're thinking of dating someone. And then lastly, I will say, find out about what marriage looks like, because being a girlfriend and being married is two different things. So in Japan, they have I love you, but you'll never hear it, because it's I like you, because I love you is not seen as something that you just throw around. So there might be conflict, because you're like, matey, you're not saying I love you to me, but he's saying I like you, because the culture's different, or he might be not expressive, he might do gestures instead, and you're like, well, he doesn't do this, because you're thinking from your Western brain rather than thinking from a Japanese perspective. So in Japan, they'll put the Japanese name first, like let's say is Sakamoto. It's not my family name, I'm just using that. And Takashi, and the first name's Takashi. Everyone would just be like, Sakamoto-san. Everything's about that, because it's about your people, it's about your lineage, it's about them. No one cares about you as a person. And I think for a lot of girls who marry into Japanese culture, they find it difficult, because they're kind of like, I'm woman, hear me roar, not realising that it's not an individual society, it's a collective society, meaning it's all about the people. Like, people will literally put an ice cream, like, you know when you have an ice cream and then you've got the wrapper, they'll literally put that in their handbag because they're like, I don't want to get the place dirty. So they would rather put that in their handbag than get the place dirty. This is how people roll, because that's the society, you know. So I would also say to any women who get married or are thinking of getting married to an Asian person, ask them, what do they think marriage looks like? Because otherwise you're going to get really unstuck, because maybe the guy will say, oh, we're just going to do 50-50 on the chores, you know, trying to be like modern man. And you get home, matey's watching TV because his mum always did the housework and his mum always did this and his mum always did that. So I really recommend looking at his mum and seeing what her role is and what she has to do, because in Asian cultures they're basically super women even if they work. You know, they're coming home, they're cooking, they're preparing, they're doing everything hardcore times 10, and you have to say, is that the life you want to lead? So that's also another thing, because your guy can be crazy romantic, but then when it comes to being married, he falls into the patriarchy of, you know, set roles, set gender roles, even if he might say, I'd never do that, you know. So that's another thing to think about, that what will your life be like as a wife? Because a lot of the time they have to be these super women outside. Inside there might be dragons. So, you know, when people say, oh, they're so submissive, that might not necessarily be true, because inside they're dragons. Remember what I was saying about them looking after the pay and giving the husband what they feel like. But outside they have to be a set way, and it's all about a thing called face. And face means that you have to show an outside face. You can't keep the same. In Western society, we keep the same face inside as outside. But your inside, you know, like inside voice, like when your mum says, wait till we get home. That's kind of like face, because it's saying, I'm not going to embarrass myself outside. But in Japan, they do that times 100. You know, they might be so angry, but they have to maintain that face. And again, this is all my opinion. I could be totally wrong. So you have to realise that a lot of the frustrations you might have if you're in a relationship might come from not realising that everyone, what is it? The world is just a theatre or a stage. Hold on, Shakespeare. That it's a stage outside, and you have to maintain that facade. And if someone bumps into you, you can't be like, oi, mate, what are you doing? You have to be like, oh, sumimasen, I'm sorry, even though they were in the wrong. You can't pop off, you can't kick off. And I think for a lot of people, whatever the demographic, because I'm not going to say this is a black girl issue, because everyone wants to pop off, but it's difficult to go against what you might naturally feel because you're from New York or you're from London, and no one pushes your shoulder, because no matter what race you are, that's just not how you do it. You stand your ground, you tell the person not to do that. But not realising that in a place like Japan, you have to be like, sumimasen, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, even if it's not your fault. So that's a lot of stuff. I hope it's useful for someone. I can go more in depth. But I just want to say, if no one's told you this, I love you. I think you're amazing. I appreciate the time you spent, if you managed to listen to all of this. And again, I might be wrong. I might be right. You know, my husband's got a t-shirt that says, what is it? My wife is Google because she's always right, or something like this. Or I don't need to ask my wife. I don't need to ask Google. I just have to ask my wife. Something silly like that. But I just want to say, yeah, I'm very, very happy that you spent the time on this video. And again, any questions, any comments, I'm here for you. Lots of love, Bambi.